We start out in Kansas City, in Arrowhead. The Cincinnati Bengals head to Kansas City. The match we talked about earlier was in Cincinnati in week 17. This one's in Kansas City. The Chiefs are 7.5-point favorites right now, 7 at mini books. So we'll see where this one ends up. The total is at 54.5. So I know we're going to talk about the total in a little bit, but I want to start with that week 17 game. So the Bengals won 34-31, very much a tale of two halves sort of game. Chiefs came out early, had the comfortable lead. They led by 14 three times in the first half. Bengals come all the way back, steal the win. How that game was earlier this month. It's January. That was January. That we don't normally get these rematches so close to one another. So we don't want to make too much of a game usually, but that was just this month. So what's your takeaway from that game, and how much should what happened that game impact what we think here?
My biggest takeaway in that game is that the Chiefs defense really hasn't improved. Look, we came into that game thinking that the Chiefs defense was like, it was absolutely dominant and one of the best defenses in the league over the last 9 weeks of the season. But when you look at the Chiefs, who have they played? They played the Giants. They played the Steelers. They played the Packers without Aaron Rodgers. They had played the Raiders twice, the Broncos twice. They played the Cowboys. And we all know that since Dak Prescott's injury, they were never the same. So they came into that game coming off beating the Steelers 36-10, and they came back against the Chargers. But for the most part, the Chargers were the best offense they had faced during that stretch. So when the Bengals went out there and just kind of carved this team up offensively, with Joe Burrow going for 446 yards, 4 touchdowns, and Jamar Chase going for 11 receptions and 266 yards for 3 touchdowns, we kind of saw the Chiefs get exposed defensively.
We did, and it definitely was not what I expected that game. What I expected was the first half. I thought that the Bengals, I didn't even know that they were a playoff team. I was betting on teams like the Steelers to win the division and get that last playoff spot in place of the Bengals, because I thought they would lose that game. Early on, it looked like they would. The Chiefs were in control. The Bengals defense was not getting the job done. And then things really flipped. But as I went back and kind of studied that game this week, I initially kind of felt like you did take away from that game that I don't know if I would say exposed. That seems like a little too much for me. I think the Bengals or the Chiefs defense has been good, but looking back, I feel like this game went, top 2 or 3 percentile outcome of what it could have for Cincinnati, in that they had so many things go right their way just to barely eke out this not miraculous victory. We're not talking Chiefs Bills here, but they really shouldn't have won the game. So you mentioned the lines for Burrow and Chase, monster games and yardage. 2 of those touchdowns for Jamar Chase came on just one, a huge bomb over the top. You thought I was going to get that one. And then another one where it was really just an underpass that Chase just broke through the entire defense. And Jamar Chase is great, but he's not Tyreek Hill. He's not going to break that one too often. So last game when they played, Joe Burrow had 264 yards after the catch on his passes. That's almost as many yards as Mahomes had the entire game. Kelsey and Tyreek Hill had only 65 yards and 17 targets. So they basically got completely shut down. Chase and Higgins were winning all game on man. Those 2 picked up 3 pass interference penalties and another penalty. We talked after the game too. The Chiefs were just crushed by penalties in that game. You and I were texting earlier, right before halftime, there was a kickoff return. The Bengals got a field goal, kicked it back off under a minute left, and the Chiefs returned it back for a touchdown that would have blown it right back open again, and it got called back on a holding penalty. The Chiefs special teams has been really good. They had another big kick return called back by a penalty. They had another 29-yard punt return that stood. In that game, Joe Burrow had 0.61 EPA per play. That is an outlandishly good number. For comparison, remember last week, Mahomes and Josh Allen, 0.51 EPA per play. So for the Bengals to win, they had to have Joe Burrow play better than the 2 guys we just saw last weekend. Jamar Chase have like the receiving game of the year, all sorts of penalty luck, that wild ending, and all of that just for the Bengals barely to get by. As I studied that this week, that made me really feel like the Chiefs are in control here.
I thought that initially, but you do have to look at the fact that Mahomes had a couple of interceptable passes that the Bengals dropped. And at the end of the day, it's like when you have that many penalties in terms of pass interference penalties as the Chiefs had, it says something about your inability to cover the opposing team's wide receivers. And it wasn't just Jamar Chase, it was Boyd. Like, so it's just, I don't know. Like when I come into this game, look, this game, it closed at Bengals plus 3.5. We're sitting at 7.5 now, 7 consensus. To me, that feels like an adjustment based on what we saw the first game. And we know that the Bengals actually came out slow. So imagine if they don't come out slow. And it's just, I just think these teams are a lot closer than what I thought they were back in week 17 when I handicapped this matchup.
Yeah, that's the scary thing. I mean, that's always the scary thing with taking a touchdown or more favorite is football is hard. It's hard to win by a lot. And it's one thing to be the better team and to need to win by touchdown or more. But we've seen it with the Chiefs. How many playoff games have we seen Kansas City come out a little flat, immediately get behind? And now if you give up an opening touchdown to the Bengals, you don't just have to have the Chiefs win by 7. You've got a 14-point script that you've got to flip. And that's just to possibly push. If you're on a -7, you might need 3 scores to take the lead. So that's the scary part, just because when you're betting on the big favorite, if you do start a little slow, if the Bengals look good early or get that one fluke touchdown, the one Jamar Chase broken play, whatever it is, it's a lot of ground to make up. Counterpoint, it's Patrick Mahomes. He can do that in like 3 minutes. He's done that in most of the playoff games. Even in these games where they've fallen behind, they're coming back and winning and covering in most cases anyway. So I've got like the devil and angel on my shoulder going back and forth on those things. So looking at the matchup of these two teams, I don't necessarily agree with you that these teams are as close as you're saying they are. So what do you think the Bengals are better at than the Chiefs right now?
Who I think the Bengals are better at than the Chiefs right now? Look, they're not going to be better offensively, obviously. I think they're the better defense. I'm gonna be honest with you. Look, I mean, like this Chiefs defense at the start of the year, we were calling them one of the worst in the league. And then they play a bunch of quarterbacks who aren't even in the top 10 in EPA per play. And all of a sudden we're looking at them like a resurgent defense. So to me, I just don't think that they're great defensively at all. Like Buffalo carved them up. Like, and I know it's Buffalo, but like they had no prayers of stopping Josh Allen. And I don't think they're going to have a chance of stopping the Bengals next week. I don't. So look, all I'm saying is 7 is too much. If the line closed at 3.5 in Cincinnati, 7 is too much because in today's NFL, we all know home field advantage doesn't mean that much. So look, home favorites are 27 and 26 against the spread since 1990 in the championship round. Favorites of 7+ are just 12 and 14 against the spread and 20 and 6 straight up. Yes, I think the Chiefs are the better team, but I just don't think they're 7 points better at this point.
Yeah, it's tough because that line, the line being at 7 or 7.5, just that little half point is enough to make me tilt a little bit to one side or a little bit to the other side. You know, initially my read on this game was very much in line with you. This is, I think, maybe our first playoff game where we're kind of battling head to head a little bit here. Mm-hmm. In my initial write-up early in the week, I picked the Bengals at 7.5. If it's still a 7.5, maybe it's still a Bengals pick. I think it might not just being a stay away from me. If you can get the 7, I don't think we're going to get under 7 again. We got that right when it opened. That's not coming back. But at the 7 is just that little key number. And even the Patrick Mahomes trends, they change from 7 and below to 7.5 above. And that little key number, that half a point, makes a big difference. I don't know that the Bengals are really better at much of anything. The offense clearly is not better. They can run the ball a little better, but I think to a detriment. We've talked a lot about how they've overcommitted to the run game. And even looking back again, they did that a lot against the Chiefs. I think there's a serious, huge coaching mismatch here. Anyone would agree with that. Andy Reid and Zach Taylor. And Zach Taylor has been playing conservative ball. That works against the Raiders and the Titans. It's not going to cut the mustard against the Chiefs. You can't keep running the ball on these early downs and setting you up for late downs in a hole. The Chiefs defense by DVOA, 20th on first down, 27th on second down, but 10th on late downs. They're actually a decent defense on late downs and good this season. They've been a top 10 defense the last 8 weeks compared to 31st before that. And we know the Bengals O-line can't protect. Chris Jones had a couple sacks last game against the Bengals. The Chiefs had 4 sacks. I think one thing we'll see different, I hope we'll see different as a possible Chiefs backer, Steve Spagnuolo was really aggressive last game. A lot of blitzing. You can't blitz Joe Burrow. He is carving up the blitz, and you're leaving your corners on an island, and Burrow and Chase were lighting that up. I think the D-line can get home without blitzing. And if the Bengals get in these negative scripts, and if the defense is even just as good as the Chiefs, but not significantly better, we know the special teams for the Chiefs are great. We know the Chiefs coaching is awesome. I just don't know where the edge is. And I was ready to say, well, 7.5 is just too much. The Bengals are going to score. The back door will be open. We saw how much they score. But the Bengals just have a lot of flaws. They're 31st in defense on first down. They're 29th in offense DVOA in the first quarter, 28th in the second quarter defensively. I just think the Chiefs are a much better team. And if I can get the 7, I think I'm willing to lay the 7 here.
I mean, for me, the play that I think is the one that I really find an edge is I like the over. I like the over 53.5. I played that. I think it's up to 54.5. I still would play it up to 55. Since 1990, championship game overs are 37, 23, and 2. That's 61.7%. And 8 and 2 to over in the last 5 years. But look, looking at these two teams, they put up nearly 900 yards of offense in the last time that they played, and both teams were over 7 yards per pass. Like, I just don't see any prayer of these teams stopping each other. And when you look at the Chiefs, they put up over 30 points in pretty much every single home playoff game that they've ever played. And we all know when it comes to the Bengals, they play just the 14th ranked schedule of opposing offenses rather. And this is a team that's given up 34 points to the Jets, 41 points to Baker Mayfield and the Browns. Like last week against the Titans, they gave up almost 8.5 yards per pass, and they almost gave up 7 yards per play, but Ryan Tannehill turned the ball over at will. When you look at the game against the Raiders, the Bengals went out there and pretty much let the Raiders into the red zone 5-6 times. They just couldn't score touchdowns. We know the Chiefs are going to score touchdowns in this one. And I don't have a ton of respect for this Chiefs defense. I think they're going to have issues with the Bengals offense as well. And look, when you look at Pro Football Focus, Joe Burrow is dominant under pressure. He actually has a higher passer rating under pressure than Patrick Mahomes. He has 91.1 passer rating under pressure. Patrick Mahomes has just a 75.2 passer rating under pressure. When his pocket is clean, Joe Burrow has 113 passer rating. So Joe Burrow has just been dominant. So I think when you have these two quarterbacks in this game, in this spot, this is going to be a high-scoring game. I'm going over.
Yeah, the over case makes a lot of sense. I'm probably not going to play the full game over, but I'm going to zoom in. I'm taking the second quarter over 16.5 in the second quarter. Basically everything you just said. I agree with all of it. I don't trust the defenses here. I trust the points. I think that we could get some emotional letdown for both these teams after tough wins last week. Could get a slow start. But second quarter defense, if you look at DVOA, Bengals are 28th in second quarter defense, and the Chiefs are 31st. So that's 2 of the bottom 5 second quarter defenses in the league. I think that maybe we get a slow start, but then the points start to really flow in. Bengals offense has really good second quarter numbers too. And we know the Chiefs will kind of get some hurry up and get going. So I'm with you on the over. I'm just zooming in on the second quarter over. Couple other trends.
If you want to zoom in one more time, I think Another way to play the Chiefs in this matchup is to play the Chiefs team total over 31. Like I said before, they scored over 31 in every single home playoff game. So to me, if they're going to cover that 7, they're probably going to put up over 31 points. So that's another angle I'm looking at.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense to me. A couple other trends to note here. In the conference championship since 2004, favorites of more than a field goal are 15-8 against the spread. So that's a 65% cover rate. Those teams are 19-4 straight up, including teams that played in the season and lost that matchup are 6-2 against the spread as favorites in the rematch in the playoffs. So the numbers say that at this point of the season, when we get to this stage, if we know a team is a lot better, that team usually proves itself to be a lot better. Patrick Mahomes, lifetime in the playoffs, 7-3 against the spread. We know the 3. He lost the Super Bowl. He lost the overtime game to the Patriots in the conference championship. And then they didn't cover in that Browns game where he got hurt. So basically, to beat Patrick Mahomes and cover in the playoffs at this point, you either need to have no offensive line in the Super Bowl with the crazy talent Tampa had, or you need that Patriots overtime, or you need him to get hurt.
You need Tom Brady pretty much. I mean, you need Tom Brady and his Brazilian wife's juju, which
exactly that. So for me, that's why I'm switching. If I can get the 7, I'm gonna tentatively take the Chiefs -7. I think it's a great spot for a teaser. You mentioned that. I just think the Chiefs get this win. So if we're at a 7, you get this down to 1. I think it's a good spot there. We like the over, second quarter over. Wrapping this one up, let's say that as we record this Sunday night, the Bengals have won the game. Give me the 20-second. What's the reaction? Why did the Bengals win this game? What happened?
Patrick Mahomes threw 2 interceptions, basically Patrick Mahomes threw 1 interception, and we have a game similar to last week where pretty much the last team with the ball wins.
Yeah, and I think that's a script.
Yeah, I think like last week, we pretty much knew that if the Bills have the ball last, they're going to win. If the Chiefs have the ball last, they're going to win. And Patrick Mahomes has had some rough turnovers this year, and he could easily turn the ball over and get the Bengals an extra possession, and that'll be enough to do it.
Yeah, I think that's the script. I just can't quite get there putting the Bengals in the same group as the Bills. I know what the Bills just did. I know they did to this defense. I can't quite put Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow in with what Josh Allen just did, but maybe they will. I'm excited to watch this one. I think we're going to have fireworks. We like our overs there.